A night of music, excitement, and escape. That's what 462 fans expected when they packed into the Station Nightclub. But within seconds of the show starting, a spectacle meant to thrill turned into a nightmare.
West Warwick to Warwick and Coventry surrounding departments reportedly fire in progress.
Flames spread with terrifying speed, trapping people inside as chaos erupted.
It was just bad hearing this scream.
By the time the fire was out, 100 lives were lost, and hundreds more were scarred forever.
The situation right now is really quite grim.
But the most chilling part? This tragedy didn't have to happen. So what went wrong at the Station Nightclub on that fateful night in 2003?
There's some pyro going, and all of a sudden, the next thing you know, the whole thing went up.
The Station wasn't just another nightclub. It was a part of Rhode Island's history. Tucked away on the corner of Cowsett Avenue and Coolest Road in West Warwick, this old building had been standing since 1946. It started as a gin mill, the kind of spot where locals would gather, swapping stories over drinks after a long day. Then came 1972. By then, the building had become a restaurant called Julio's, but one night, fire tore through the inside. No one was there, thankfully, but the damage was bad enough to shut it down for good. 2 years later, another restaurant tried to make a go of it. In 1985, it became a pub, but like the others before it, that didn't last. By the late 80s, the doors had closed once again. Then, in 1991, a nightclub moved in. And eventually, in March of 2000, brothers Michael and Jeffrey Derderian bought the place, ready to put their stamp on it. But turning it into the Station wasn't some massive renovation project. The Derderians made a few key changes: a raised stage for live music, a dance floor, some pool tables in the sunroom. But the bones of the place remained the same. The bar stayed where it was, and so did all the behind-the-scenes spaces, like the office and restrooms. Before opening, they made sure everything was up to code. Under the International Building Code, IBC, the 4,500 square foot space could hold just over 200 people as a bar. But for live performances, that number nearly doubled. Legally, the building could accommodate around 420 people. The thing is, nightclubs fall under the same category as theaters. Assembly spaces where people stand or sit close together to watch a performance. And while the law allowed the Station to pack in twice as many people for a concert, that didn't mean the building itself was twice as safe. Because it was an older structure, it was grandfathered into older building codes. That meant it didn't have to meet the stricter, more modern safety requirements that newer venues had to follow. In other words, even though the Station wasn't originally designed for big crowds and high-energy rock shows, it was still allowed to operate under the old rules, as long as nothing was made worse. A few months before the fire, the building went through 2 fire marshal inspections. The first time, inspectors found 9 minor code violations, but they didn't catch the biggest hazard of all, the highly flammable soundproofing foam. The second inspection missed it again. In fact, the fire marshal even marked the building as all clear. Part of the reason? During the first visit, the inspector had been too focused on an illegal door the owners were told to remove, so the foam went unnoticed. Then, in late 2002, Great White's tour manager, Daniel Bichel, reached out to the Derderians to set up a February show at the Station. Most of what Bichel asked for was fine, but one thing raised a red flag. He wanted to use pyrotechnics. The Derderians weren't willing to take that risk. They told him the show could go on, but absolutely no fireworks. But Bichel didn't listen. The Station had built a reputation for hosting concerts, especially 80s hard rock acts and tribute bands. And it wasn't unheard of for performers to use pyrotechnics there. A Kiss tribute band had even set off fireballs during a show a few months earlier, and nobody had complained. But this time it was different. In February 2003, Jack Russell's Great White was out on tour.
Get out now, get a real job. It's all going to hell.
This version of the band, led by Jack Russell himself, was like a spin-off of the original Great White, keeping the frontman but with a slightly different lineup. When they were announced as the headliner for an 80s rock night at the Station, fans were thrilled. The opening act set the stage for a great night, and by the time Great White took over, the crowd was already buzzing. They were known for putting on a show, and pyrotechnics were a big part of that. This night would be no different. Before the set started, a stagehand set up 4 spark machines, called gerbs, just like they always did. These were designed to shoot sparks 15 feet into the air for about 15 seconds. 2 were angled and 2 pointed straight up. The setup seemed routine, but there was something dangerous about this venue that no one really thought about. The foam padding on the walls and ceiling, meant to absorb sound, was actually a fire hazard. Instead of stopping the sparks, it trapped them. The band kicked things off with their usual opener, Desert Moon. Sparks shot up as part of the show, but within 10 seconds, the unthinkable happened. The foam caught fire. The flames spread fast, but at first no one reacted. The band kept playing, unaware, and the audience watched, thinking it was just part of the performance. For about 30 seconds, what felt like forever, everything seemed normal. No panic, no rush. People just stood there, watching the flames creep across the ceiling. In other parts of the club, where the fire wasn't visible yet, no one had any idea what was happening. Then it all escalated. The fire raced across the foam-covered ceiling and hit a foam-lined wall, turning the club into a smoke-filled nightmare. Thick black smoke swallowed the room. The music stopped. Jack Russell, still standing at the mic, simply said, "Wow, that's not good." At that moment, survival came down to seconds. The reality? People had only 90 seconds to get out before the building became deadly.
We were just walking back in, and everybody was running out. People are running out on fire. It's probably the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Fire officials have a term for that, tenable. A space is tenable as long as the heat, smoke, and lack of oxygen aren't yet overwhelming. But once temperatures hit 250 degrees, or oxygen levels drop below 12%, compared to the normal 21%, survival becomes nearly impossible. The band bolted for an exit backstage. The fire alarm blared and panic finally set in. People scrambled for the exits, but not all of them could be used. There was one exit meant just for employees, tucked away behind some doors. Only 12 people managed to escape through it. Most of the crowd was near the dance floor when the fire broke out, leaving them with 2 main options: the main entrance or the door by the stage. Now, in theory, that stage door should have been a lifeline. At least half the people near it should have been able to get out. But survivors say a bouncer was actually stopping people from using it when the fire first started. And even if they had tried, the door itself was a disaster waiting to happen. It was faulty, something the fire marshal had already pointed out. It was also hidden behind another door that swung inward, making it even harder to reach in an emergency. Worst of all, it was covered in highly flammable foam. Just 1 minute into the fire, that entire doorway was engulfed in flames. That left the main entrance. But that was just as bad. People from the bar and the dart room were also trying to get out that way. In total, about 275 people rushed toward the front doors, but they ran straight into another problem. The entrance had narrow doorways that forced everyone to squeeze through. After just a minute, the exits were completely blocked. A deadly crowd crush formed, trapping people inside. Only the first 90 made it through before the way out was completely jammed. With the front door impassable, people turned around, desperate for another exit. But the smoke was so thick they couldn't see. It was impossible to know which way led to safety. Some people accidentally ran into dead ends, like an office with barred windows, no way out. Then, 2 windows near the parking lot became unexpected escape routes. At first, they weren't obvious exits, but in the chaos, people found them. One helped 54 people escape, the other saved 24. Meanwhile, the actual emergency exit in the bar? Only 54 people got out that way, mostly regulars who knew exactly where it was.
She usually doesn't work Thursday nights, and it was her birthday. She's got a 7-year-old son who right now is with relatives and not aware of what's going on.
Calls flooded into 911 within seconds. A police officer already on the scene wasted no time reporting the fire. Within minutes, the first fire truck arrived, and soon every firefighter in West Warwick was battling the blaze. Departments from neighboring towns rushed in to help, while a restaurant across the street quickly turned into a makeshift triage center. Then just before midnight, part of the roof collapsed. A few minutes later, another section gave way. Paramedics took the injured to Kent Hospital, which quickly became overwhelmed. By 1:30 a.m., every victim had been transported and the street was finally cleared. A total of 462 people attended that concert, but the night ended in tragedy. When it was all over, 100 lives were lost, 230 people were injured, and just 132 made it out unscathed. But the question is, could this disaster have been prevented? The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, wanted to get to the bottom of what went wrong. So they rebuilt 20% of the building and ran a series of tests. They recreated the exact conditions of the fire to see just how quickly things spiraled out of control. And sure enough, that foam material on the walls was a disaster waiting to happen. In their test, 20% of the building became completely unusable in just 71 seconds. That's barely enough time to react, let alone escape. But here's the really disturbing part. There were no fire extinguishers anywhere near that section of the building. No sprinklers either. Nothing to slow the flames down. So NIST ran another simulation, this time adding a standard sprinkler system. And the results were eye-opening.
Questions about nightclub safety were being raised even before this latest calamity, which happened in West Warwick, Rhode Island, just outside of
Within 30 seconds of the fire starting, the sprinklers would have kicked in, dousing the flames before they could spread. That's before most people even had time to panic. If the building had been equipped with sprinklers, the fire wouldn't have turned deadly at all. So that was the first problem. The fire spread too fast. But what about the exits? It was obvious they weren't good enough. In emergencies, people don't always make the best choices.
Yes.
Fire?
Hey, fire. It's correct. Police calling.
Yeah.
Did West Warwick call you for help?
Not yet. We're gonna give them some help. Why?
Because they have 200 people trapped in a building.
That's what I heard. Yep.
Yep.
We're gonna send them some people.
Okay.
They tend to stick to the routes they know, even if there are better options. This is called herding behavior, and it can cause dangerous bottlenecks, just like a traffic jam when there are open lanes nobody's using. NIST ran another study, this time using computer simulations to see how people evacuated. They found that by making one simple change, removing a narrow bottleneck near the main entrance, they could shave 150 seconds off the total evacuation time. That's 2.5 minutes. Long enough to save a lot of lives. Today, a memorial stands where the once nightclub used to be, but the legacy of that night goes beyond remembrance. Fire codes are stronger now, and we have a much deeper understanding of how people behave in emergencies. This fire didn't just lead to new laws, it changed the way we think about safety and our responsibility to prevent these kinds of tragedies. Did you find this video interesting? Give it a like and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you will stay updated on new videos about remarkable fire disasters. Also, click the bell icon so you don't miss a single video. What did you think of this story? Let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you in our next video.